Welcome to the Logistics Point interviews. We are joined by Sebastian Steinhauser from Parcelly, and we're going to talk about consumer expectations, micro hubs, and what Sebastian is going to share with us on the 21st of March at our first in-person networking event. Sebastian, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Nick, for the invitation. Pleasure to be here today.
How have consumers' expectations changed the way we execute deliveries and even think about deliveries in the logistics space today?
What customers continue to expect ever more is convenience. Being provided with the respective delivery options they need in a specific circumstance or life situation that can change once a customer has chosen a specific delivery option over another. A different option might be more convenient next time they use it. So this is one of the very large and ever-evolving trends. Second trend of customer expectations is certainly everything around certainty. Knowing that something is at a specific point in time, at a specific place. Tracking events become ever more evolved. It doesn't necessarily need to be this live tracking where you see the van moving on a map, but instead just being updated with a well-structured, channeled type of tracking, communication, and notification process is something really, really important. And then beyond that, of course, we see a very clear trend towards speed. We see that the overall average collection time has significantly dropped, whilst we refer to it as being 0.8 or 0.7 of a day. In 2015, 2016, we are now much faster. A notification can almost trigger an instant collection from a collection point. So we are sub the 0.4 mark per day. So the reality is, with all this combined, the overall infrastructure that is required, the challenges for logistics and e-commerce become bigger and bigger, because there is a lot of more service level required than a few years ago, when you think of what customer expectations are today. And at the same time, it is a fantastic movement because it drives innovation. We haven't seen as much ability and interest to collaborate within the logistics industry these days as we have in comparison to many years before, where it seemed that many e-commerce platforms, retailers, and carriers still try to build the entire omni-channel logistics platform themselves. So it's overall most certainly a positive trend.
So how can we actually combine the fast, the convenient, and then the operationally possible thing?
And I think that's a very interesting, still not completely solved challenge. The reality is providing speed and convenience is, I think, something that has been already achieved with many of the available delivery options that there are. When we talk speed, technically, a customer doesn't necessarily expect instant or on-demand delivery. Quite the opposite. Next day is still most of all a convenient option that customers choose. So speed is certainly something that most of the major carriers and most certainly all retailers now offer to a certain extent. I exclude now the real live instant delivery universe from that, but look just literally at the normal plain vanilla mainstream logistics volume that is typically with next day fast enough for most of the online shoppers. When you talk about convenience, though, there are ever-changing expectations, and whilst a normal click and collect location seemed to be convenient enough in the past, it is certainly today some much more comprehensive that is required to make a pickup and drop off point, a PUDO, or anything similar, or a hub you mentioned, as convenient to a customer as it was in the past. A customer would love, for example, today to get a parcel brought back to the place where they collected it. So just having a one-way directional pickup experience that is not the same as the return process is something that can really lower sales opportunity for retailers. So all that said, convenience and with changing challenges and yet more or less fulfilled, speed achieved, with delivery speeds around next day that still is sufficient for most of the online shoppers today. There is still the challenge of how do you make this operationally efficient and cost effective. And here you cannot rely on, when we talk about this point, we cannot rely on purpose-built infrastructure only, but it is incredibly powerful to have, to tap into solution providers like Parcelly that provide access to access space, already available space and concession locations, drop-off or pick-up and drop-off points or hubs that are not necessarily built on the one business case of executing parcel shipments only, but have a core business. They operate, for example, a supermarket, everything around convenience, and as a side service also provide pickup and drop-off services, both in and outbound related. And this is where real cost efficiencies can be achieved because no purpose-built investments need to be made. The overall infrastructure is much easier to maintain, and overall scalability is far lower in capex, etc.
And what type of technologies can we use for these things, which might be a dark store or a hyper-local warehousing, or what you mentioned is a store where it sort of fulfills both brick and mortar and online orders at the same time?
From a technology perspective, in our case, it is literally a mobile app that scales therefore very quickly. Technically, from a hardware perspective, we just need the a standard mainstream iPhone or Android device to host our app that then turns that phone into a in-store scanner device for both processing in and outbound shipments, triggering all the respective events, managing users, providing dashboard data, etc., etc. But when you're looking at the service capabilities, the range of different store and access points you just listed are of course very different. A micro hub is fantastic, typically not necessarily a supermarket, but a smaller warehouse in a city, that is fantastic to provide services around cross-docking, so pallets in, single items out, then last mile delivered through on-demand couriers, etc. Or everything around deep storage, hyperlocal warehousing, etc. So the hub becomes very effective in that because you have typically it all connected with a efficient loading bay, opening times that are adapted to the carriers or logistical needs, etc., etc., licensing, security. And yet it is not so convenient typically for a consumer to walk up into these kind of micro hubs. It still has a kind of warehouse feel, and not necessarily what a online shopper who just wants to pick up a online retailer's parcel really wants to experience. So they walking through a parking lot or so, having this kind of warehouse infrastructure. A online shopper much more prefers a convenience store or a newsagent, similar. So the Pudo is much better for everything that is consumer facing as a service proposition. A pickup and drop-off location in a supermarket news agent, as mentioned, therefore well suited for everything around click and collect, return, drop-off, return consolidation, etc. And then you have a broad range of location types that might fall in between or beyond. In between maybe larger enterprises, not necessarily in the high street, but more outside where you can park with the car outside when you pick up or return something, and then purpose-built warehouses somewhere outside that can be utilized as a hub to replenish micro hubs in a city. Every location type basically comes with its benefits and is therefore skewed towards a specific service proposition.
And I mentioned in the beginning, you will be joining us on the 21st of March for the in-person networking event. So
Looking forward
what
to that,
can
yeah.
people expect, and why should they come and see you?
Well, we will most importantly talk about industry trends. I think this is always very close to our heart, looking where the industry has been a year before and what we can forecast and project in terms of development going forward. Now we are obviously looking full of excitement into the course of 2023. Peak 2023 will be again full of exciting challenges. On top of that, we would obviously love to update on latest trends within urban logistics, where we are obviously strong and positioned is everything around this kind of click and collect, return consolidation environment, but also our micro hub and hyperlocal fulfillment capabilities is something that that can be seen in many different ways and shapes all around the world now. And considering the challenges not just of consumer expectations, but also ultra low emission zones and so on and so forth, has really put an accelerator behind this kind of urban logistics trend. So sharing about our views on that and how it might evolve and what retailers and logistics companies might want to look out for as partners or of our service ideas is then most likely the second part of that presentation.
Well, Sebastian, thank you very much for your time. And people can join on the 21st of March for the networking event by clicking the link below. Thank you very much.